My family kept saying my wife was using her pregnancy to manipulate me, so I recorded them at my birthday dinner and sent the audio to everyone including my pregnant wife. This happened last week and my family is absolutely losing their minds, but I think what I did was completely justified. My wife Sarah is 7 months pregnant with our first child and has been dealing with some pretty intense pregnancy symptoms. My family has been making comments about how she's milking it and using the pregnancy to control me for months now, and I finally had enough. Let me give you some background. Sarah and I have been married for 3 years and this pregnancy was very much planned and wanted by both of us. Sarah works as a nurse and has always been incredibly independent and strong. She's not the type to complain about anything or ask for help unless she really needs it. But this pregnancy has been rough on her. She had severe morning sickness that lasted well into her second trimester, she's developed pregnancy-induced hypertension that requires monitoring, and she's been experiencing really bad sciatica that makes it painful for her to stand or walk for long periods. Her doctor has told her to take it easy and avoid stress as much as possible. Because of all this, I've been stepping up to help more around the house. I do most of the grocery shopping now, I've taken over cooking dinner most nights, and I help her with things like putting on shoes or getting up from low chairs when her back is bothering her. To me, this just seems like basic decency when your partner is growing your child and dealing with physical discomfort. But my family sees it differently. My mom Janet has been making comments since early in the pregnancy about how Sarah is taking advantage of her condition. She keeps saying things like women have been having babies for thousands of years without all this fuss, and back in my day we just got on with it. My dad Robert isn't much better. He constantly makes jokes about how I'm whipped and how Sarah has me wrapped around her little finger. He acts like me helping my pregnant wife is somehow emasculating or embarrassing. My sister Michelle is the worst though. She had 2 kids and apparently had easy pregnancies, so she thinks every woman should have the same experience. She's constantly making comments about how Sarah is exaggerating her symptoms and playing up the pregnancy to get out of doing things. The comments really ramped up about 2 months ago when Sarah had to leave my nephew's birthday party early because she was feeling dizzy and nauseous. Instead of being concerned about her well-being, my family immediately started whispering about how she was being dramatic and ruining the party. A few weeks later, Sarah couldn't come to my cousin's wedding because she was having bad cramping and her doctor advised her to rest. My family was furious and said she was making excuses and trying to control whether I went to family events. They kept pressuring me to go without her, which I refused to do because I wanted to take care of my wife. Then last month Sarah had to ask me to help her put on her shoes before we left for dinner at my parents' house because bending over was causing her severe back pain. My mom saw this and later pulled me aside to say that Sarah was being manipulative and training me to wait on her hand and foot. I tried to explain that Sarah is dealing with real physical limitations because of the pregnancy, but my mom said I was making excuses for her and that she was using the baby to get out of normal adult responsibilities. She said that if I didn't set boundaries now, Sarah would walk all over me after the baby was born. Every family gathering became tense because they would make passive-aggressive comments about Sarah's pregnancy symptoms or give me grief for being attentive to her needs. They would roll their eyes when I helped her sit down or brought her water without being asked. They acted like I was being ridiculous for treating my pregnant wife with care and consideration. The breaking point came 2 weeks ago at a family barbecue. Sarah was having a particularly rough day with her sciatica and was trying to find a comfortable position to sit. I kept checking on her and adjusting pillows behind her back to help her get comfortable. Michelle watched this for about 10 minutes, then loudly announced to the whole family, "Oh my God, look at this performance. She's got him trained like a dog." I was pregnant too and I didn't need my husband to fluff my pillows every 5 minutes. Sarah heard this and her face just crumpled. She tried to excuse herself to go to the bathroom, but I could see she was crying. I followed her and found her sobbing, saying that she felt like she was being a burden and that maybe she really was being too needy. I was furious. Here was my pregnant wife who was already feeling vulnerable and uncomfortable, and my family was making her feel guilty for having pregnancy symptoms and needing support. I told her that she wasn't being needy at all and that my family was completely out of line. We left the barbecue early and Sarah spent the rest of the weekend upset and questioning herself. She started trying to hide her discomfort from me and refused help with things even when I could see she was struggling. She was so worried about seeming manipulative that she was making herself suffer unnecessarily. That's when I decided I needed to do something. I realized that my family would never stop making these comments as long as they thought I couldn't hear them or wouldn't stand up to them. I needed to get proof of what they were really saying so I could address it directly. My birthday was coming up the following week and I knew they would all be together at dinner. I decided to record the conversation to document exactly what they were saying about my wife when they thought I couldn't hear them properly. I downloaded a recording app on my phone and made sure it was ready to use during dinner. The plan was to find an excuse to step away from the table so they would feel free to talk about Sarah without me there to defend her. The dinner was at my parents' house and Sarah couldn't come because she had a doctor's appointment that afternoon and was feeling exhausted. I was actually glad she wasn't there because I suspected they would be more openly critical without her present. Sure enough, within the first hour my mom started making comments about how convenient it was that Sarah had missed another family event. Dad made a joke about how I was getting a taste of married life by having to show up alone. I just smiled and didn't respond because I wanted them to keep talking. About halfway through dinner I excused myself to go to the bathroom, but instead I went to the kitchen where I could hear their conversation clearly while staying out of sight. I started recording on my phone and just listened. What I heard was worse than I had imagined. Michelle immediately started talking about how Sarah was obviously faking half her symptoms and that she was using the pregnancy to turn me into her personal servant. She said that Sarah was smart because she had figured out how to get out of everything by claiming pregnancy problems. Mom jumped right in, agreeing that Sarah was definitely manipulating the situation. She said that she had been pregnant 4 times and never needed this level of coddling. She claimed that Sarah was setting a precedent where she expected to be waited on and that I was enabling her lazy behavior. Dad said that he was worried about me because Sarah was training me to be a pushover and that I needed to put my foot down before the baby came. He said that if I didn't establish boundaries now, Sarah would use the baby to control me for the next 18 years. But then Michelle said something that made my blood boil. She said, "I honestly think Sarah got pregnant on purpose to trap him. She knew she could use the pregnancy and then the baby to never have to work again and just live off him like a parasite." Mom nodded and said, "That's exactly what I've been thinking. She quit her nursing job way earlier than necessary and now she's milking every little ache and pain to avoid any responsibility. She's got him convinced she's this fragile flower when really she's just lazy." Dad laughed and said, "Well, she picked the right sucker. He's so worried about being a good husband that he can't see he's being played. She's probably laughing at how easy it is to manipulate him." Michelle added, "The worst part is how she puts on this innocent act like she doesn't know what she's doing. But you can see in her eyes that she knows exactly how to push his buttons. She's got him doing everything for her while she sits around like a princess." I was recording all of this and getting angrier by the minute. But then Mom said the thing that really sent me over the edge. "I just hope he realizes what kind of person he married before it's too late. This baby is going to be born and she's going to use it as an excuse to never lift a finger again. She'll have him working himself to death while she plays the victim and acts like motherhood is the hardest job in the world." I had heard enough. I walked back to the dining room with my phone still recording and sat down like nothing had happened. They all immediately changed the subject and started talking about sports like they hadn't just spent 10 minutes tearing my wife apart. I stayed for another hour listening to them make subtle digs about Sarah while acting like loving, concerned family members to my face. Every comment about how I looked tired or how I seemed stressed was clearly their way of blaming Sarah for my condition. When I got home I was still furious, but I didn't say anything to Sarah because I didn't want to upset her. Instead I spent the evening thinking about what to do with the recording. I knew I had evidence of exactly what my family thought about my wife, but I wasn't sure how to handle it. The next morning I made my decision. I transcribed the entire recording so I could see their exact words in writing. Then I sent the audio file along with the transcription to every single person who had been at that dinner. I included my parents, Michelle, my brother who had been there but stayed quiet, and my uncle and aunt who had also heard some of the conversation. I sent it in a group text with this message: "Since you all seem to have strong opinions about my wife and marriage that you're not comfortable sharing with me directly, I thought you should hear how you sound when you think I'm not listening. Sarah is not manipulating me. She's pregnant with your grandchild/nephew and dealing with real medical issues. Your behavior toward her has been cruel and unacceptable. Until you can treat my wife with basic respect and dignity, we won't be attending any more family events." Then I sent a separate message to Sarah with a recording and transcription. I told her that I wanted her to hear what my family was really saying so she would understand that their treatment of her wasn't her fault and that she had every right to feel hurt by their behavior. The response was immediate and explosive. My phone started ringing within minutes. Mom called first, absolutely screaming about how I had betrayed the family by recording a private conversation. She said I had violated their trust and that what they said was just venting and didn't reflect their real feelings. I told her that if those weren't their real feelings, then why did they say them? I pointed out that they had called my wife lazy, manipulative, a parasite, and a gold digger. I said that venting doesn't excuse talking about a pregnant woman like she's some kind of con artist. Mom tried to backtrack, saying they were just concerned about me and that they only want what's best for our marriage. I reminded her that she had literally said she hoped I would realize what kind of person I married, which didn't sound like someone who wanted what's best for my marriage. Michelle called next and was even more furious. She accused me of setting a trap and said that I was just as manipulative as Sarah. She claimed that I had taken their words out of context and that they were just worried about how much I was doing for Sarah. I asked her to explain how calling my wife a parasite who got pregnant to trap me was taken out of context. She couldn't answer that, so she started crying and saying that I was destroying the family and that Sarah had turned me against them. Dad's call was the worst. He was livid that I had gone behind their backs instead of talking to them directly. He said that men should handle things man to man and that involving Sarah was cowardly and manipulative. I pointed out that I had tried talking to them directly multiple times about their treatment of Sarah, but they had always dismissed my concerns or made excuses. I said that maybe if they had listened when I tried to address things respectfully, we wouldn't be in this situation. He said that I was choosing a woman over my own family and that I would regret this when my marriage inevitably failed. He claimed that Sarah would show her true colors eventually and that I would come crawling back to them for support. The extended family members had mixed reactions. My uncle was embarrassed and apologized for not speaking up during the conversation. He said he hadn't agreed with what was being said but didn't want to cause drama at a family gathering. My aunt was more defensive and said that while the language was harsh, they were just worried about me. But Sarah's reaction was what mattered most to me. When she listened to the recording she cried, but she also said she felt validated knowing that she wasn't imagining their hostility toward her. She had been questioning herself and wondering if she really was being too needy or dramatic about her pregnancy symptoms. Hearing them call her manipulative and lazy when she's dealing with legitimate medical issues while growing our child made her realize that the problem was never with her behavior. The problem was with their attitude toward pregnancy and women in general. She said she was grateful that I had recorded it because now she knew exactly where she stood with my family and could stop trying to win them over or prove herself to them. She said it hurt to hear those things, but it was better than continuing to wonder why they always seemed annoyed with her. Update 1. The fallout from sending that recording has been intense. It's been a week now and my family is still completely losing their minds about it. But some interesting things have started coming to light that make me even more glad I did what I did. First, my brother Mark finally spoke up. He called me 2 days after I sent the recording to apologize for not defending Sarah during that conversation. He said he was uncomfortable with what was being said, but he didn't want to rock the boat with our parents. But then he told me something that made everything click into place. He said that our mom has been making these kinds of comments about Sarah since before we even got married. Apparently during our engagement Janet was telling people that Sarah was only marrying me for financial security and that she was too independent to be a good wife. Mark said that when we announced the pregnancy Janet's first reaction wasn't excitement about becoming a grandmother. Instead she said, "Well, I hope she doesn't think this means she can quit working and live off him." Mark said he was shocked by the response but didn't say anything because he thought it was just an initial reaction. He also told me that Michelle has been pushing our parents to be more critical of Sarah because she's jealous of how supportive I am during the pregnancy. Apparently Michelle's husband wasn't very helpful during her pregnancies and she resents seeing me be attentive to Sarah's needs. This explains so much about why the criticism seemed to escalate over time. It wasn't just about them thinking Sarah was being dramatic about pregnancy symptoms. They had already decided she was wrong for me and were looking for reasons to justify their dislike. The second major development was a call from my grandmother on my dad's side. She had heard about the family drama from my aunt and wanted to get the full story. When I told her what had been said about Sarah, she was appalled. Grandma told me that she had noticed how my family treated Sarah at gatherings but hadn't realized how bad it had gotten. She said that she thought Sarah was lovely and that she could see how much we loved each other. She was furious that they were talking about her great-grandchild's mother like that. But here's the kicker, Grandma told me that Janet had been saying similar things about her when Dad was dating her 40 years ago. Apparently my dad's family thought Janet was too needy and manipulative when she was pregnant with me. Grandma said the irony of Janet now criticizing another pregnant woman the same way she had been criticized was not lost on her. Grandma also revealed that Michelle has always been competitive with other women in the family and has made nasty comments about every girlfriend or wife that her brothers have brought around. She said Michelle has issues with women and tends to see other females as threats to her position in the family. This conversation with Grandma was eye-opening because it made me realize that this wasn't really about Sarah or her pregnancy. This was about deeper family dynamics and patterns of behavior that had been going on for decades. Meanwhile, Sarah has been doing much better since hearing the recording. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but she said that knowing the truth about what they think has actually been liberating. She stopped trying to prove herself to them or win their approval and instead is focusing on her health and our baby. Her pregnancy symptoms haven't changed, but her stress levels have decreased significantly now that she's not constantly worrying about whether she's doing something wrong or being too demanding. She's back to asking for help when she needs it instead of suffering in silence to avoid seeming manipulative. But the most satisfying part has been watching my family scramble to do damage control now that their true feelings are out in the open. They've all been calling other family members trying to spin the story and make themselves look like the victims. According to my cousin who heard it secondhand, Janet is telling people that I secretly recorded them and violated their privacy while conveniently leaving out what they actually said about Sarah. She's trying to make it sound like they were having a normal concerned conversation and I overreacted. Michelle is apparently telling people that Sarah coached me to record them and that this is all part of her plan to isolate me from my family. She's claiming that Sarah is controlling me and that the recording proves how manipulative she is. The problem with their damage control attempts is that I sent the actual recording to multiple family members so people can hear exactly what was said. They can't really deny calling Sarah a parasite and a gold digger when it's right there in their own voices. Some extended family members have reached out to express their support for Sarah and me. My cousin's wife said she was disgusted by what she heard and that she doesn't blame us for wanting space from that toxicity. My uncle said he's always liked Sarah and thinks my immediate family owes her a massive apology. But Janet, Robert, and Michelle are doubling down instead of apologizing. They're acting like they're the ones who were wronged and that I should be apologizing to them for recording their conversation. They seem to think that saying horrible things about my pregnant wife is fine as long as they thought I couldn't hear it. Yesterday Janet sent me a long text message saying that she forgives me for betraying the family but that I need to come to my senses and realize that Sarah is driving a wedge between us. She said that if I choose Sarah over family I'll end up alone and divorced in a few years. I responded by telling her that I didn't choose Sarah over family. I chose my wife and unborn child over people who were treating them with cruelty and disrespect. I said that a real family would be excited about the baby and supportive of the mother instead of looking for ways to tear her down. I also pointed out that she was literally proving my point by continuing to blame Sarah for the situation instead of taking responsibility for her own words and actions. I told her that until she could acknowledge what she did wrong and make a genuine apology to Sarah, there was nothing more to discuss. Sarah and I have decided that we don't want any of them at the hospital when the baby is born. We originally planned to have both sets of grandparents there for the birth, but after everything that's happened, we want that experience to be peaceful and positive. We're also not doing any family gatherings for the holidays this year. Sarah's due date is in early December, so we'll have a newborn anyway, but even if we didn't, we're not subjecting ourselves to more of their toxic behavior during what should be a happy time for our new family. Update 2, final. It's been 3 weeks since I sent that recording, and the situation has reached its conclusion in a way I never expected. My family's response to being called out has been so extreme and revealing that it's actually made our decision about the future much easier. 2 days after my last update, Michelle showed up at our house unannounced while I was at work. Sarah was home alone resting when Michelle started pounding on our door demanding to be let in. When Sarah answered the door, Michelle immediately started screaming at her, calling her a manipulative witch and blaming her for destroying the family. Sarah tried to close the door, but Michelle pushed her way inside and continued yelling. She accused Sarah of coaching me to record them and said that Sarah was using the pregnancy to turn me against my own family. She called Sarah a gold digger and said that everyone could see through her innocent act. The worst part was when Michelle grabbed Sarah's arm and said, "You think you're so smart, but I see right through you. You got pregnant on purpose to trap my brother, and now you're trying to isolate him from people who really love him." Sarah managed to get away and locked herself in our bedroom while calling me at work. She was crying and shaking when I got home 20 minutes later. Michelle was gone by then, but Sarah was having contractions from the stress and we had to go to the hospital to make sure the baby was okay. Fortunately, the contractions stopped and both Sarah and the baby were fine, but the doctor said that kind of stress could have triggered premature labor. I was absolutely furious that Michelle had put my wife and unborn child at risk with her unhinged behavior. I immediately called the police and filed a report for harassment and trespassing. I also called Michelle and told her that if she ever came near my wife again, I would press charges and get a restraining order. She started crying and saying she was just trying to save me from Sarah's manipulation, but I hung up on her. When I called my parents to tell them what Michelle had done, their response was not what I expected from people who claim to love me. Instead of being horrified that their daughter had terrorized my pregnant wife, they got defensive and said Michelle was just emotional because she was worried about me. Mom actually had the audacity to say that Sarah was probably exaggerating what happened and that Michelle would never do anything to hurt a pregnant woman. When I told her that Sarah had contractions from the stress and we had to go to the hospital, she said that Sarah was being dramatic and using the baby to make Michelle look bad. Dad said that I was overreacting and that family members should be able to express their concerns without fear of police involvement. He claimed that Michelle was just passionate about protecting me and that I should be grateful to have family who cared so much. I told them that showing up at my house uninvited to scream at my pregnant wife wasn't expressing concern, it was harassment. I said that Michelle's behavior was dangerous and unacceptable and that I expected them to condemn it instead of making excuses for it. But they continued to defend Michelle and blame Sarah. Mom said that if Sarah hadn't caused all this drama by making me record them, then none of this would have happened. She said that Sarah was playing the victim and that Michelle was the one who deserved sympathy for being driven to desperation. That conversation made it crystal clear that my family will never change. They will always see Sarah as the problem and themselves as the victims. They're so committed to their narrative that Sarah is manipulative that they're willing to excuse dangerous behavior that could have harmed my wife and baby. The next day I sent them all a final message. I told them that Michelle's actions had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I said that anyone who would terrorize a pregnant woman and then defend that behavior was not someone I wanted in my life or my child's life. I also told them that their response to Michelle's behavior had shown me exactly what kind of people they really are. I said that grandparents who would excuse someone putting their grandchild at risk were not grandparents I trusted around my family. I made it clear that until Michelle faced legal consequences for her actions and they all acknowledged the harm they had caused, there would be no contact between us. I said that my wife and child deserved to be surrounded by people who loved and respected them, not people who saw them as threats to be eliminated. The response was immediate and predictable. I got angry calls and texts accusing me of choosing an outsider over blood family and warning me that I would regret this decision when my marriage fell apart. Michelle sent me a long rambling message about how she was only trying to protect me and that Sarah had brainwashed me against my own family. But the most telling response came from my dad, who said, "Fine, but don't come crawling back to us when she leaves you for someone with more money and takes half your stuff. We tried to warn you, but you chose to learn the hard way." Even in their final message, they couldn't help but reveal their true thoughts about Sarah. They still genuinely believe that my wife is a gold digger who married me for money and is using pregnancy to manipulate me. Nothing I could say or do would ever change their minds about that. The contrast with Sarah's family has been stark. When we told her parents what happened, they were horrified and immediately offered to help us get a restraining order if needed. Her mother said that no one should ever have to deal with that kind of treatment, especially when pregnant. Sarah's family has been incredibly supportive throughout this entire situation. They've never questioned her pregnancy symptoms or suggested that she's being manipulative. They treat her with kindness and respect and are genuinely excited about becoming grandparents. It's made me realize what a normal, loving family actually looks like. They disagree sometimes and they're not perfect, but they fundamentally care about each other's well-being and happiness. They don't look for ways to tear each other down or assume the worst about each other's motives. Sarah and I have decided to move forward without my biological family and focus on building our own family unit. We're surrounding ourselves with people who love and support us, including Sarah's family and the friends who have been incredible throughout this whole ordeal. Our baby is due in 6 weeks and we're both excited to start this new chapter of our lives. Sarah's pregnancy symptoms have actually improved since we cut contact with my family because her stress levels have decreased dramatically. She's sleeping better, eating better, and generally seems much happier. I don't regret recording that conversation for a second. It gave us the truth about what my family really thought and saved us from years of wondering why they always seemed to dislike Sarah. It also protected our future child from growing up around people who fundamentally don't respect their mother. Some people might think I went too far by recording them and sending it to everyone, but I disagree. They felt comfortable saying those things about my pregnant wife as long as they thought there would be no consequences. Making them face the reality of their own words wasn't cruel, it was necessary. To anyone dealing with family members who undermine or disrespect their partner, trust your instincts and protect your spouse. Family members who truly love you will want you to be happy and will treat your partner with respect. Anyone who consistently tries to turn you against your spouse or convince you that they're manipulative is showing you their true character. Your spouse and children should never have to endure abuse or harassment from your family members. Sometimes protecting the people you love means setting boundaries that other people think are too extreme. But those people aren't the ones who have to live with the consequences of toxic family dynamics. Sarah deserves to be surrounded by people who celebrate her and our growing family, not people who see her as a threat to be eliminated. Our baby deserves grandparents who are excited about their existence, not people who see them as a tool of manipulation. We're building something beautiful together and we're not going to let toxic people poison it with their negativity and conspiracy theories. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into.